Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, how many books have I got and why have I got so many? So a little while ago I made a video about rereading and the fact that I'm not a big fan of rereading. It's something I do occasionally, but it's not something I do very much at all. And Andrew from the channel, it came from the page, made a very sensible comment on that video, which was, if you don't reread books, why have you got so many books that you've already read? So I thought I'd make a video answering that question and also answering the question, how many books have I got in total? Because that is a question I get quite a lot in the comments. So let me answer that second question first. So the answer is I don't know, but I've made an estimate. So what I certainly haven't done is gone and counted all of my physical books. There are loads behind me, there are loads to either side of me, there are loads out in the garage, and to count all of them, to do a proper inventory, would take probably a day. And I just haven't got the time to do that. So what I have done is estimated. Now, if you wanted to, you could come up with an accurate number for how many books I've got by watching videos on my channel. So in the early days of the channel, I did a library tour where I showed all of the books that I had at that point. It was like a multi-part video, but I went through all of the books that I had at that time. And subsequent to that, I have done book haul videos where I've shown every book, apart from about 10 probably, which have come in recently, where I showed every book that I've received since starting the channel. So by adding the volume of books in those videos together, you could come up with yourself an accurate number for how many books I've got. I don't think I've got rid of any books since then. I did make an unhaul video a little while ago, but those books are still in a bag in the garage. I haven't actually got round to getting rid of them. And that is part of my problem. I'm terrible at getting rid of books that I've got. And I'll talk about why I think that is as part of this video. So let me come up with my estimate then. So the way I've done it is I've counted on a few of the shelves behind me how many books there are on the shelves. Bear in mind these shelves are double stacked, so there's another layer of books behind the books that you can see. That's not true for the top shelves, which are hardcovers, but for these shelves where there are paperbacks and the ones down here, there's another layer of books behind the ones you can see. So I reckon that on these shelves, so I think on the top shelves where there are hardcovers, there's about 100 books, so about 25 books per shelf, times 4 shelves. On these shelves, I think there's about 60 books on each shelf. So 30 in front, 30 behind, roughly. So that comes to 480 because I've got 8 of those shelves. Then in terms of what's to either side of me, so by the side of me here, I've got a book cart. I reckon, so that book cart has got 3 shelves and each shelf has got like 2 halves, so like front and back if you like, and I reckon there's about 20 books to each half, so that's another 240 books roughly on my book cart. And then beyond the book cart there are some stacks of books and some boxes with books in. I reckon the volume there is about the same, so I reckon about another 240 books there. And then on the floor down here I've got a load of books that I've been sent. Mostly these are books I've been sent for review by people. I think there's about 40 there. So that comes to, adding all of those up, that comes to 1,100 books that are in this room with me now. Now I haven't gone out into the garage to have a proper route around, but I think there's a similar number in the garage. Based on what I know about how the books are laid out in the garage, so I've got some shelves in the garage with books on. Again, they're double stacked, and I've got loads of boxes in the garage as well. So I think there's probably a similar number. So let's say I've got about 2,000 physical books in total, probably between 2,000 and 2,200. So that's a rough estimate for the number of physical books I've got. And then I've also got digital books clearly. Now that number is much easier to get to because I can just look at Calibre and see how many digital books I've got. And that number is just over 3,200. I think it was 3,290 something. So I think in total I've got between 5,000 and 5,500 books, which is a lot. And I have read less than half of those. So Andrew is right that I don't get rid of books. I've got a lot of books that I've already read, thousands probably. But I think the majority of the books I've got are books I haven't read yet. And if you think about, I was thinking about like, your philosophy of book buying, if you think about people's philosophy of book buying, I think there's like a spectrum, isn't there? And this is a spectrum that only includes people who buy books. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got people who buy a book because they need something to read. So they have finished the book that they were reading, they need something else to read, they go and buy it, they find a book, and they buy a book, and they read that book, and then they repeat that process. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who will buy any book that they see that they think they might want to read one day. And, you know, there's a range in between those two extremes. I'm definitely nearer the extreme that will buy a book I think I'm going to read, rather than someone who only buys books when I need something to read. I'm definitely very, very far away from that end. So that gives you a sense of my book buying philosophy. I have tried to calm down a lot in recent years, partly through doing the Read What You Own challenge, which I'm doing again at the moment for the 4th time, but also just generally. So I did have a terrible habit of buying digital books in particular, so like Kindle Daily Deals and things like that, just like buying loads of like dozens and dozens of books a month. And also with physical books, just buying books that I saw in secondhand shops in particular that I thought I would want to read one day. What I'm trying to do now with both of those things is not buy the book if it is a book that I can easily get out of the library. If it's a book I know I'm always going to be able to get hold of somehow, then I probably won't buy it. Now, if I'm out and I see an old vintage book, or like a trashy men's adventure book or a vintage horror book or something like that I know is out of print and is likely to be difficult to get hold of, then I will probably buy it. Apart from when I'm on the Read What You Own challenge, clearly. But I'm much more likely to buy that book. And I do sometimes buy like job lots of books from eBay because someone is selling like a bunch of executioner books or something like that I know I'm going to want to read somewhere at some point because I'm working my way through the series. And those are books that, you know, you can't get in libraries. They're more difficult to get digitally. So it kind of makes sense to me to buy them. And indeed, a lot of the books in the garage are that kind of thing. So I've got dozens and dozens of like Edge books and like Mac Bolan books and things like that in the garage. So that gives you a sense of my philosophy of book buying. So I do have a large number of books that come into the house, if you like, and you'll know that from watching book haul videos that I've done. And I'm also blessed that, you know, a lot of writers and publishers send me books that they'd like me to read as well. So that explains the volume coming in. The volume going out is pretty much nil. So as I said, I did do an unhaul video a while ago where I got together a load of books that I didn't want anymore, but I still have those books, and that video was made months ago. I haven't got around to actually getting rid of those books. And I think part of the reason why I'm very bad at giving up books is something that happened to me when I was a bit younger. So when I was in my kind of mid to late 20s and had moved in with my now wife for the first time, we had a small 1-bedroom flat that we were renting. And my parents decided they needed to clear out all of my books from home. So they didn't want to be storing my books at home. And there were, you know, not as many books as I've got now probably, but certainly at least 1,000 books probably. So we went in the car, we picked them up, we brought them back to our flat, and we just didn't have room for them. They were just boxed up in boxes in the living room, looking unsightly. And my wife quite rightly said, you know, we can't live like this. So I ended up selling loads and loads of books to the vast majority of that collection to a local second-hand bookshop and got not a huge amount of money for them. Now, in that collection were, you know, books I'd spent decades collecting. Well, probably 2 decades collecting. So some books from my childhood, but also just loads and loads of books from my teenage years. So loads of like vintage horror books in particular. Quite a few Ed McBain books, but like loads and loads of vintage horror books. The kind of books that you nowadays see in paperbacks from hell, and when you look for them on eBay, they're going for like 50, 60 quid. Including loads of books that were like movie novelizations, like lots of like horror movie novelizations. So I think I had pretty much all of the novelizations of David Cronenberg films. I had a few Friday the 13th ones and Nightmare on Elm Street ones, which again, you know, go for quite a lot of money nowadays. And that experience was a stinging experience, you know, particularly a few years later when I came to realise that you know, a lot of those books had gone up a lot in value and would be very difficult for me to reacquire affordably. So that kind of explains why I think I'm bad at giving up books. I do try and do it though. I do try and get, particularly if I've got and I've got a number of instances of this where I've got both a physical and a digital copy of a book, I will get rid of the physical copy unless it's, you know, like has a particular like sentimental attachment or something like that. Then I'll get rid of the physical copy. And I think a lot of the books in that recent unhaul video were books like that. But as I say, I just haven't got around to getting rid of them yet. So hopefully that answers both of the questions. How many books have I got? A lot. 2,000+ physical books and 3,000+ digital books. And why do I hang on to books that I've already read? The reason is that, well, partly that experience that I had when I was younger, but also just the fact that, you know, maybe I will want to revisit them one day. I'm someone who enjoys having a lot of books around me. I like the idea that I will always have something to hand that I can read. And it may be revisiting something. It's more likely to be reading something new that I haven't read yet, but I enjoy the comfort of having a ready supply of books, you know, my own personal library that I can dip into. And clearly I have, you know, I read about 200 books a year, probably 250 books a year. And I've got, based on that estimate, you know, I've probably got so let's say I've got 2,500 unread books. So I've got 10 years of reading, even reading it, you know, if I was able to maintain the pace I read at now, I've got 10 years worth of reading without having to buy anything new. So I'm comforted by that. I like the idea that I've got a lot of ready reading that I know I will enjoy close to hand. Anyway, that's my philosophy of book buying. Hopefully that's answered the questions, but do let me know in the comments if you've got any other questions. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.